My name is Ayaka, TA and consultant here with the LSAT Unplugged. Thank you for joining me today. We are talking about researching your school and how you want to do that. Now, I'm sure people think, duh, no doubt we got to do this. It's obvious. And however, we get caught up in the LSAT studying, we get caught up in writing our personal statement, that by the time we get to actually inputting our names and grades and transcripts and letters of rec into our application, and they say, which schools are you going to apply to? We're like, oh yeah. And so I've heard it happen to more than a couple people. So I just want to make sure that everyone gets the chance to research your own school, find the right school for you, and kind of walk you through how you want to do that and what are the considerations. And those considerations can be very different from person to person. So I want to be aware of that. So here we are. Let me first share my screen. Just hold on, let me zoom into this. And this is not a very complex presentation. So researching your school, hold on. And then you guys went all the way over there. Okay, researching your school. So, very simple. We're not looking to do any rocket science here. But I do want to start with why you should research your school. First, you really want to get basic information, and I know a lot of people are going to go, oh yeah, the LSAT, the average GPA, what's the class makeup? Yes, all that information. But also, you really want to look at, what are the class size? And where is it actually located? What do the buildings look like? What kind of programs do they have? So you really want to understand, what does the school provide as an academic service? The other thing is, it's when you Google search law schools, you're always going to get the USA Today, best schools in America, and it gives you the T14, and everyone's going for a T14. But what else is there? When you actually look into a T14 school, are there things that are missing that you think are important to your career? Are there things that are there at other schools that aren't there in the top schools, right? I kind of have to say 14 schools doesn't cover everything that everyone wants from a law school. So really think about that. You can also kind of tell what kind of student the school is looking for, right? And we can get into this a little bit more when we look at real law school websites. And then special programs that the school offers. We just heard about, clinics that schools offer. That might be helpful to you if you already know the type of work you want to do after law school. The type of programs, where is it located? Is it located close to New York, DC, the state capital? All those things matter, right? Job opportunities and networking. Is there a robust alumni community that you can reach out to? Where are the alumni located? What's the stats on passing the bar? What's the stats on job, getting a job in a job that requires a JD? And there are people who just don't go into a job that requires a JD, but want that law school education. So kind of looking at that, looking at the makeup of the alumni. And lastly, I actually think this is pretty important, is if you're actually interested in that school, at some point or another, you're going to have to talk to admissions, ask questions. And if you haven't researched the school, looked at their website, checked out what they're offering, you're going to be asking pretty obvious questions. And by looking at the website, doing your research, and kind of thinking about yourself going to that school, you're better equipped to ask the right questions for your law school career. So those are the big whys here for why you should research your school. And then considerations that might not be obvious, but these are things that, I am 5-6 years out of undergrad, and above rankings and all the like the best law schools in America kind of things. Outside of that, there are other factors that really affect which school I'm going to. Is it a big school, small school? What's the faculty to student ratio? Is it in an urban area? Is it a rural area? Is it, there's a huge alumni reach? Are they placing lawyers near their school? So let's say if your school is located in California, are the majority of lawyers coming out of that school staying in California, or are they moving to other states? The location. Some people might say, oh yeah, UCLA is in LA. UC Irvine is in Southern California. It's almost the same thing. Not really, right? So what does location mean to you? Also, in LA, to drive 15 miles takes 2 hours. Do you really, those are all considerations. And finally, dual degree programs. This might not be the most popular thing that you might think about, but if you're really going into a niche program or a program that might require a little bit more expertise, you might be looking into doing a dual degree program. And not all schools provide this. Not all schools provide dual degrees for all subjects, right? There's different schools that have different strengths and weaknesses. So you really want to look into what the school offers. And in that, absolutely, the schools will usually link to directors of the program or chairs of the program, and you can message those people directly. And I do highly encourage you to do that. Now, I think these considerations differ greatly by where you are in terms of your life. If you're coming straight out of undergrad, maybe, going to North Carolina isn't a bad thing. But maybe, when you're going in your late 20s, you really don't want to go to the middle of nowhere. You want to be in a city. You want to be in a place where there's an airport so you can go see your family. Like, all those things matter. And I think personally that the more of a career you've had, and this is maybe a career change, you have a little bit more considerations to think about. So I'm not saying these are limiters, but these are really things that you want to look out for in your school, and be really thoughtful in your research so you understand what you're getting yourself into. You don't want to get into a school and be super excited and then be like, oh my God, the reality is you're going to be, 20 miles from anywhere, and you have to have a car and all this. And, you want to set your expectations right, and you want to do the research accordingly. So I think right now, research is pretty, at our fingertips. A lot of schools have almost all of their information online in their website. So I kind of want to take us through real law school websites, see what we can find, what are we looking for, and kind of see if we can see the differences between schools, because there's very different characteristics from one school to another. So here we go. Let me know if you guys can't see anything. Oh, I see things in the chat. Hold on. Okay. Oh, okay, Alyssa, I love this comment from you where you say you felt like you're floating when looking at schools. Can you kind of elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, if you want to go back, actually, it was like on slide 2. Like you mentioned it, it seems very basic, but like what kind of student the school is looking for, special programs the school offers. To me, it's honestly, like I've mentioned this before, I'm first generation or would be first generation law student, and the rankings is the most obvious thing that it's sort of like thrown like at a Google search. And of course, we all know about like the ABA disclosures, but knowing what to look for, I don't know, to be honest, and before I found LSAT Unplugged. Sorry, I have a creature, a small dog behind me. But before I found LSAT Unplugged, I was basically like, oh, I'm just going to go to whatever school will take my application. And I was not in the mindset whatsoever of what school would I like want to go to. So I don't know if anyone else has ever been in that mindset or like coming from, like domestic abuse. It's like, or having PTSD, like it's a very big switch to start to look for programs that would actually work for me. So having something like this does feel a lot more concrete, even as basic and simple as it seems. So it's great.
Awesome. Cool. And as always, please put comments and questions in the chat. I've opened up the chat window so I can see them now. So thank you for that, Alyssa. I think that's true. And I've gone through my fair share of like, ooh, what school do I want to go to? And it's always like the recommendation is always like Georgetown. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, well, okay, that's great. But and the more research you do, the more you can picture yourself at that school. So really I do encourage that research. So moving on, let's look at like actual websites. So I've pre-selected a couple. Stanford Law School, right? Look at that beautiful campus, big letters, experience Stanford Law School. Awesome. They have the COVID-19 vaccine acceptance in California state prisons, articles that were written by the faculty there, introduction to faculty, all of that. Great, right? I personally, I like to go straight into I'm a future student, right? Admissions, this is what you're looking for. This is like the basic of basic informations that you really want to get here. So I will go here. And this is more for me as a checklist of, okay, these are the things that are pretty normal. There's nothing that jumps out at me that's like, I need to pay attention, right? So I just want to have a mental checklist of, okay, yeah, these things I know, these things are right, this feels all right. Things that might jump out are like if they say like we're going to ask for a statement about why Stanford or something like that, that might be something that I put a mental note on. But just going through all of this, message, you want to read the message from the dean, because this will kind of tell you what kind of school they are, but also what kind of student they're looking for. Right. So you really do. A lot of people don't read the message from the dean, and most schools have a whole thing. This is a pretty long message from the dean, but most people have it. And it will tell us the highlights of the school, what they think their strengths are, and also what kind of students they're looking for. So you really want to read this. And I think a school that really puts up an extensive and robust message from the dean is awesome in that it tells us what the head of admissions is actually looking for in a student. So you really want to look at that. Also, if you get a chance to talk to, let's say, the dean of Stanford Law, you don't want to go in without reading this. This is the roadmap that she's giving you to talk about Stanford Law. So you really want to read this. You really want to kind of and brush up on it right before you talk to her or talk to someone from the admissions committee. Let's see, going back a little bit, and this is kind of where you'll get the basic information. So like the JD program, what is it? blah, blah, legal doctrine, blah, blah. And this might give you like the tidbits, the facts, and the distinguishing factors about Stanford law and all of that. All good things. Clinics, you see it here, clinics, labs. It's like, what is a lab? So you can kind of dig in there. Global opportunities, amazing. Projects, all that. So great. Good information all around here. So JD application procedure, I like to go here too, just so I know my general, if I were like, yes, I need to apply to Stanford Law, I would look at this just to see a general view of what the application cycle looks like. It doesn't seem like it's anything out of the ordinary. Although clearly this data is important here. They're asking that your application be complete if you are applying to the Knight Hennessy Scholar Program. So kind of look for those things, and then the deadline for your actual application, February 15th, right? And you should find all of the important information here. Great. Now, going back, let's see. So let's say you're looking at all this and you're like, okay, what is great about Stanford Law, all that, and you go into courses. I like to look at courses because it tells you what the offering is. And usually the first year academics are fairly consistent across most law schools. So I would look at probably I would look at a little bit further in the future to what's available after your first year at law school, because that's where, your interests might come out a little bit better than the standard classes that we all want to take. So let's see. Okay, so we're going to do spring break, which is too far. First year academics. Law school. Okay, so this is kind of where I'm like, but this is a little confusing for me. I'm like, where is all this information? And part of it for me is in understanding a law school is how easy is it for me to find the information that I'm looking for. And it's a little difficult for me to find, let's say, 2L elective courses, right? Where are they? But they give a lot of information about current law students, what the textbook list looks like. So you get a little bit about what it is to be a student here. And that might be of interest to you if you're very, very serious about Stanford Law and you're like, you want to know everything about it, which is good. And I think, you can get a good idea of what the calendar year looks like, the exams, all of that, instructors, and you can always look into faculty. That's a good thing to do, is to look into faculty. And so you can find all of that here. Cool. And then this is very nice, and it says tuition financial aid and has the Office of Admissions. I think it would be a good idea if you are researching the school to go into the Office of Admissions page, see what they're offering. And also I would always, I don't have it ready for you guys here today, but I have a spreadsheet of all the contact of admissions that I can get from a website. So, and that sheet is updated after the first contact with admissions, because usually you'll get a name, a different email, like a direct email or a direct phone line to a person admissions. So keep track of how to contact admissions. It might be a phone number, it might be an email here, right? And once you get past that general email, make sure you jot down your contact in admissions that you can ask questions and follow-up questions with. Also, let's see. Let's go back a little bit. Here we are. The JD program. Again, I think here, this first page for Stanford Law, pretty pretty self-explanatory. They also have that joint degree button that we talked about earlier. If you're looking to do a joint degree, check it out. What do they have? They have a JD Masters, JD MD. That's a tough one, JD PhD. And I love that it's an established joint degrees. So all these joint degrees that have been established before. And hopefully what you're looking for is here. Good questions to ask admissions if you are looking for a joint degree is if they don't have a joint degree program available at the moment, is that something that you can work with your advisor, your faculty advisor, to create one? Or if you see one that you like, what is the process of applying to that? A lot of times it's not clear. So, these are the questions that you really want to be asking admissions if you're looking into a dual degree. Cool. So I think we got the gist with Stanford. A very beautiful page, a little bit difficult to find more information outside of that first year. It might be hiding in the I am a current student or page, might be. But there's a lot of information here, and they're very generous with the amount of information they've put up. So make sure you read all of this before you're actually having a conversation. Not to say that you need to memorize all this information, but familiarize yourself with it. Comparatively, let's say, if I can get this bar out of my way, hold on. Let's bring this up. Okay. Comparatively, something like UC Hastings, this is also my kind of page where it's all up here in a drop down. So this is, however you like to do it. I love that it's all in a drop down. So I'm not like, ooh, where do I need to click to get to where I need to find my information? The first page, always beautiful campus, the recent classes and all of that, news, virtual campus tour, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so I would always, again, go to admissions, check out what they're saying there. I always say, I think you should read this, like blurb that they always put up, because a lot of times we're asking ourselves really basic questions and we're like, oh, it's right there. So read that, and kind of look at the whole page, see what you're looking for. I think we all know how to find the basic information about, your class size or where it's located, all of that, or GPA, LSAT. I think the more interesting stuff for me, class profile, that's interesting. And especially if you're thinking about writing a diversity statement, look at the class makeup. If you're writing a diversity statement, for example, and if you notice, not to say this is true for UC Hastings, but if you notice there's a huge Asian population, let's say, then you might want to take a different spin on your diversity statement for that school. So, UC Hastings, I love this because UC Hastings put all the stats up really easy, really quick. Great stuff. And then, this is kind of where you really want to pay attention. Careers and employment. Is this something that, do you really want to go into clerkship? Well, 7% of their class has gone to clerkship. So it's happened for people in their class, but it's not the overwhelming majority. I don't think any school has an overwhelming majority of people going into clerkships, but 7%, that might be a location thing. It might be just the graduating class, you never know, but these are things that you really want to pay attention to, with the majority going to law firms. Does that sound good for you in your career? We don't get a lot of what's included in those law firms. So that's something that you might want to put an asterisk in and ask admissions. Can you give me a breakdown of people? Let's say for myself, I'm interested in cybersecurity. Do you have a breakdown of people who go into law firms who have a specialty in cybersecurity? And you can always ask those questions. Admissions usually has an answer for you. Yep. So all this, I don't really think the information about the undergraduate institutions is really important, but I digress. And they give you employers. This is very nice. They give you the employers for the class of 2019. So that's actually more information than I've seen with other schools. So this might be something that you actually look into, and it might be a really good thing for you to refer to and say, and reach out to alumni if you want to know more about a certain opportunity or certain job opportunity after your 3 years. Let's see. What else? I am also going to go into academics here for us in the Hastings website. I do want to look at centers and programs. So when we look at centers and programs, they're always going to put the big things there, right? Center business law, criminal justice, Indigenous Law Center, East Asian Legal Studies, Center for Gender and Refugee Studies, Center for Innovation, LexLab, all these great things. And I would always double click into them especially in the ones that you are interested in, because you want to make sure that what they are referring to is the same thing that you are interested in. I definitely got into a whole thing of, there was a school, I don't remember which one it was, but a school that said risk management and public health. And for me, risk management means very different things than what the school was referring to. So you want to make sure, tax law, let's say, there's not a lot of interpretations about what tax law is, but you just want to make sure that what your understanding is and what the school is offering matches up. And the more you look into it, there's more nuance than you think there is. So I would really look into all of that. And of course, the bigger schools are going to have more centers, more programs. You also want to look into the extent of the programs. And I really want to refer to, let me see here, University of Maryland Francis King Carey School of Law. So for them, their programs, and I've done a lot of searching on this website, so bear with me, but they have programs in impact, and they have a lot of programs out here, business law, dispute resolution, all of that, great. For example, if you click into the cybersecurity crisis management program, there's another center for it that it links into. And so you're going to go deeper into a rabbit hole, but the more you go into it, you're going to see what the program is, what the program offers, and also where those programs kind of feed into. And that could really be a good connection for you in future employment. And the more that I'm researching schools, it's like, yes, the T14s are important and the rankings are important. And yes, I get all of that. But the other thing, if you don't care about rankings, if you don't care about the name of the school that you're going to, it's employment past your 3 years at law school. And that's kind of where I am focusing on in my research. And that's really the key consideration for myself. So I think you really have to kind of figure out what your considerations are. And I think that can develop as you research, but you really want to see what connections the school has, where do the alumni who graduated out of those programs, graduated out of those clinics and did those clinics and graduated out, where they ended up. Did they go and continue the work that they've done at the clinics? And really, you can ask admissions those questions. Um, and I always love, hold on, this is not what I was looking for. Sorry. So going back to UC Hastings, I always love when, let's say, for example, Center for Business Law, they have the program, blah, blah, and then they give us the chairman or the director, someone you can contact. And I always contact them. I send them an email, and I think that's something that anyone can do. So I love a school who puts that information out in front, and you can contact them at any time. So I think doing the research will give you more avenues to reach admissions, not just cold calling admissions, but also reach them in a more impactful way and a more way that is memorable to them and more impactful for you. I know it's a little all over the place. Any questions at this point? I know we got like a quiet class today.
I was just going to say it really is helpful. It's actually, I don't know if it's bizarre or if anybody else feels like this, but I've personally heard a lot of people applying through to law school say at different points in the process that it feels lonely, or like there's always a moment where it feels like a needle in a haystack, maybe for people, like, and I know for me it does. And so to actually see you go through it is oddly and like charmingly feels like the support that I sort of needed to just see how somebody else navigates the website and what email you choose to look at and how you are sort of determining what the post 3 years would look like, aside from ABA disclosures. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it can really be overwhelming. So I like to say, and Solomon, I see your comment, I will send that to you, the Excel spreadsheet, right, that I have of the contacts and all that. I will send that to you. In researching, you can so easily fill an hour, 2 hours, go down a rabbit hole. And then you come up and you're like, I don't even know what happened in that hour. So I like to say, use the Pomodoro method, which is 25 minutes of focus, 5-minute break, because you want to focus those 25 minutes on getting the information that you really want to get. I understand that reading an article is super interesting, and you might go into their citations, you find another article and another article, and it's just ongoing. And however, you're studying for the LSAT, you're preparing your application, you're writing your personal statement, and it can take a lot of time. So I want to make sure you're using your time in a effective manner. And so doing that 25 minutes on, 5-minute break, 25 minutes on, 5-minute break, breaks that time up so that you can say, okay, I'm going to look at UC Hastings for 25 minutes, get all the information that I can get. My goal is to get a contact for admissions and find a contact that I can reach out to for tax law, let's say, right? And then you do that, take a couple notes, and then your 25 minutes are up. Let's move on to Stanford, and then do the same thing. And so you're keeping the task focus without going into a rabbit hole. So that's my recommendation when you're going about your research. But I think it's really, really important. I remember a year ago when I started off, I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm looking at all these T14 schools because that's the only one that's come up in recommendations. And it's like, there's a ton of schools out there. There's a ton of schools that are right for you, and there's a ton of schools that aren't right for you. And the game is, can you find enough information to make that distinction of a school that's right for you and a school that isn't? And do you really want to be wasting your time for a school that isn't? What do you say when you reach out to the dean? I mean, I say, so when you, Jack, a little bit of context there, when you say reach out to the dean, do you mean like a cold email to the dean themselves, or admissions and address it to the dean? Okay. I don't know if you're, oh, okay, cool. So I would say I always title mine like fall 2022 admissions, or whenever your admission cycle is. So yeah. Um, and then start off, very nicely, but don't overdo that first line of like, hello, I thank you for your time, blah blah blah. Like that's a little much. Just be like, hello, I'm seeking admission on 20XX cycle, and then kind of introduce yourself and ask, if you're asking for 10 minutes with the dean, ask for it. I don't know why you would cold message the dean unless you're asking for a face-to-face, a conversation, an answer to a question, something like that. I know, Alyssa, you made a really good point in a conversation we had a couple weeks ago, where if you have a lot of questions, kind of thematically refer to them and say, hey, I have a couple questions on this topic. Can I get X amount of time with you at your convenience? And, be ready for a non-response or a rejection. You can always come back and counter that, but, always be asking for something. And if you are asking for something, make it clear. Don't put it at the, don't make it the last sentence of your letter. Always say like, hey, I'm seeking a couple minutes with you on the phone, on Zoom. I was looking on your website and I have a couple questions around X, Y, and Z, and go in that route. Okay, so you're trying to figure out, yeah. And I think when you're trying to build a rapport with admissions or school or dean, I think it's important to show interest. And part of showing interest is knowing. So like Alyssa said in the chat, it's asking good questions. And I think it's a sign of you doing your research when the person you're talking to says, that's a good question. And I almost always try to get the person that I'm talking to say, that's a great question. And so you don't want to ask surface level staff. They're going to be like, well, you clearly didn't look at the website. But I think asking thoughtful questions about, the classes that they offer, let's say, and how that relates to a clinic, or how that relates to a program, people graduating out of that program, what kind of jobs they're in, or even sharing that, let's say, I want to go into government, right? And I am looking for this very specific program. And can you tell me about the people who graduated out of that program? Are they working in government, or have they gone to law firms? What are the career opportunities there? And how big is the program? What interest do you have? Like initial interest do you guys get in the application process for that program? How popular is it? There's a bunch of questions you can ask. And being curious about the program is a great way to create that rapport, because you're throwing that question and they're more than likely to answer that question. And then with that given information, you can ask more questions. So that's kind of where I say build a rapport. Jack, does that make sense? Are you looking for, you can always put out specifics if you have one, but I hope that answers that question. Yeah. And I've reached out directly to multiple, people, not just deans of admissions, but people like directors of a program, and say, hey, can you tell me a little bit more of the program? I'm interested in X, Y, and Z. and be very specific. Yeah. Yeah. And Jack, to tell you the truth, I also was like, oh, I don't know how to write an email to like a dean of admissions, right? So I definitely sent that email to Alyssa, and I called her and I was like, hey, help me write this email. So I think it's always nerve-wracking. You're cold calling. But the person was super nice, emailed me back in 30 minutes. So, we're all here for each other. So feel free to ping me and say, hey, I need you to look at this email, or, whatever, because that's probably the hardest part. I always think the hardest part is the subject line. How do you subject line an email that's a cold call? But, Alyssa is amazing at it. So I say leverage the people here. Alrighty. If there are no other questions, that's all I have for y'all tonight. I know it was a little here and there, but I cannot, say enough about researching the school that you want to go to. It can open your eyes to new schools that you might not have thought of, which has happened more than once in this cycle. For me, I think, knowing the school gives you a better roadmap to your law career. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you for joining me today. I will see you all next week.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.